March 7th, 1981, San Francisco, California. The body of 23-year-old Keryn Barnes is discovered in her Haight-Ashbury apartment. Bludgeoned in the head and stabbed, police couldn't fathom who would do such a thing to the young, aspiring actress. But the more authorities asked around, the more they became aware of Keryn's former roommates who'd flown the coop, a woman who said she could see witches, and her husband, her willing disciple. This case has it all: drugs, sex, murder, and a whole lot of crazy. This is Suzan and Michael Carson, the San Francisco Witch Killers. Hey, y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potter. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends over, and never done this before, I can't believe it, in the UK.
Okay.
And this goes to a shout out to a good buddy of mine, Luke Johnson, who actually creates a lot of my software that I use here in the studio.
Who you call UK Luke because we have a son named Luke, and he'll start talking about Luke, and I'm like, wait a minute, what?
I love both Lukes. They're both great guys. So anyway, welcome, mate. Welcome, mate. Welcome, mate. Because he uses mate for everything.
He calls
which I
you
love.
mate?
Yeah, he sure does. Love
That's
it.
the same as saying dude, I think.
Yeah, mate.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to subscribe to Hitched to Homicide. Then like, rate, and review the podcast so others who like true crime can find us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you want true crime with us all the time, please join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws. Go to Facebook, type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, and you're in. Please go join. We've got lots of new people in there. I post photos and other information in there as well. Great group of true crime folks. We love them. That's our family.
Sure are.
You can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And we have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee.
Please do.
He drinks it every episode. Thank you to Tiffany Payne, who writes, "Hey, I love listening to your podcast cases. A lot of them I haven't heard. Well, catch up." Thank you for mentioning my late husband, Kyle Payne. It was 2 years he's been gone, July 6th.
Oh.
And then she said, please do Larissa Schuster. So she bought a coffee, thanked us.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And then gave us a case suggestion. She was just getting it all in one email.
One-stop shopping.
So thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
You can find that link in our show notes. You can also send us a text. The link to that is at the top of the show notes where it says, send Chris and Rob a text. And we have a couple. We got one that said, hey, from Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Ah,
that was it.
That was
hey,
it?
Fredericksburg. And we also got a note from Sophia Cooper's grandpa, which I thought was adorable.
Oh.
I love your podcast. So back at you, Virginia, which, like Kentucky, is a commonwealth and not a state.
Yep.
And to Sophia's grandpa, a big hello. I adore your talented and beautiful granddaughter, who's currently at the Ailey School. She's dancing in New York City. Very talented little girl.
Nice.
Well, I guess she's not a little girl. She's a young woman.
Yes.
But she was a little girl when I met her. I'll always think of her that way.
Yeah.
So this is a fascinating case, this one. I fell down the rabbit hole, couldn't get out. Before we get started, let me thank some sources. Medium.com, CBS News, Sonoma County District Attorney, Wikipedia, SF Gate, AP News, The New York Post, People Magazine, NBC7, San Diego, The series I Lived with a Killer, Find a Grave, the podcast Enter the Dark, and the book Witch Killers, the true story of Suzan and Michael Carson by Tammy Bennett. I will post a link to that book and all the other sources that I used because it was a big long list. I gave you the highlights, but I'll put them all in the show notes.
There you go. All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Suzan Barnes was born on September 14th, 1941 in Arizona. She said her earliest memories were of World War II. But while the world was at war, her family sort of lived in comfort because her dad was a newspaper executive. Huh. And in fact, all this war coverage sold tons of paper, and that only made more money for Suzan's dad. So It was good for Suzan's father and for their family. He's making lots and lots of money. But from the outside, the Barnes family was the all-American dream, and Suzan spent her childhood lounging at the country club by the swimming pool, soaking up the Arizona sun.
Nice.
I kind of spent my childhood lounging by the country club swimming pool as well, soaking up the Kentucky sun. But behind closed doors, her life wasn't as perfect as it seemed because despite her charmed upbringing, Suzan was silently battling mental illness. Now, from a young age, Suzan claimed she could hear voices and see visions, and she insisted these were psychic powers that gave her glimpses into the past and the future. And to her, the world shimmered with after images only she could see and echoed with voices nobody else could hear, just her.
Well, that pretty much tells me there was nothing wrong with her. Wow.
So right out of the gate.
Yeah.
This so-called second sight made her feel different from other children. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But she really believed that it made her special. Well, all children are special, Suzan, not just you. But to everybody else, Suzan just seemed odd. Her classmates really didn't understand her strange behavior, and the adults who were around her sort of just like dismissed everything as nonsense. But she felt really alienated at school. She withdrew. She began to struggle socially and academically. And things at this time weren't much better at home because despite her family's wealth and privilege, Suzan felt really detached from them, like she didn't belong in their world, like she didn't belong in this world. As she grew older into her teenage years, she tried her best to mold herself to fit her family's bougie lifestyle, but deep down, she knew she was different. She played tennis, she dressed to the nines, she mingled with the other wealthy kids, and Suzan worked hard to be the ideal, perfect debutante in the 1950s. And she followed the path set out for her by her parents, and for a while, it seemed to work. You know, she felt different, she felt odd, but then she sort of molded herself into what she thought her parents wanted her to be.
Okay.
So she's like a country club kid playing tennis.
Gotcha.
I mean, she was a little bit of a misfit child, but she just turned herself into this polished, preppy aristocrat girl, and this is going to carry her into adulthood. And it's kind of unclear exactly what Suzan did after high school. What we do know is that she stayed in Arizona's elite circles. She married a businessman, she settled into Scottsdale, and she had 2 children. So from the outside, it looked like Suzan was living a perfect life. But inside her head and behind closed doors, it was a completely different story. Suzan had an obsession with teenage boys, specifically her own son's classmates.
What?
She seduced and slept with over 150 young men, just going through them one right after the other.
Why buy the pig when you... never mind.
No, it's why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free.
Oh,
and women say you don't need the whole pig just for a little piece of sausage.
No, okay.
That's the saying.
All right.
Now, I don't know if it was her visions, once again, that started her use of drugs, or that she was just sort of rebelling against her conventional life, but she started doing psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin and ayahuasca and peyote.
Wow.
And she is in the Southwest, so think about that.
I should lay off the peyote.
Lay off the peyote. The first time Suzan took LSD, it sparked something that would alter the course of many lives forever. Witnesses later recalled her waking up the next morning, claiming, quote, "the entire house is painted with triangles," end quote.
Whoa.
So she's mentally ill, but nobody's really addressed it, and now she's taking psychedelics. This is not a good recipe.
What could possibly go wrong?
A lot is going to go wrong.
All right.
But Suzan's hallucinations weren't just fleeting trips. They were the beginning of a complete break from reality. She showed symptoms of schizophrenia, which were amplified by mind-altering substances. But to Suzan, this wasn't mental illness. She believed she was embracing free love, political revolution, and the power of psychedelics. So she's really sort of mixing up her mental illness with the way these psychedelics make her feel.
Once again, what could possibly go wrong?
Exactly.
Wow.
She smoked weed regularly and used psychedelics to escape the boredom of her suburban life. And if that's not Mother's Little Helper, I don't know what is. When her husband discovered she had this double life, she'd been sleeping with these little boys, or young boys, I should say, doing drugs, he filed for divorce, and he was granted immediate custody of their children. Can you imagine him going in talking to the judge? She's sleeping with 150 of my son's colleagues or schoolmates.
Right.
And doing drugs. And the judge is like, sure, you can have the kids.
Yeah. Here, let me think about this.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
And Suzan didn't fight it. She was fine to walk away and leave that chapter behind her, which to me is like a mother who leaves her kids. That's hard for me.
There's a special place in hell.
Exactly. After the divorce, Suzan turned to religion, if you can believe that, but she twisted traditional beliefs to fit her own sort of warped worldview.
Right.
She was fascinated by religious figures with spiritual gifts that put them in positions of power, prophets who claimed to hear God's voice, like Moses or Elijah or Daniel or John the Baptist and Jesus Christ himself. Or if you're studying the Quran, Muhammad. And Suzan believed that she was one of them. She was a prophet sent by God. Suzan wanted to create her own religion. She studied the religious wars of the past and was captivated by the idea of future conflicts that would reshape humanity. She became obsessed with Islam's history of spiritual warfare and pored over the Quran, particularly passages about the apocalypse and angels sent as God's messengers about the end of days.
Okay.
So Judgment Day is consuming her thoughts.
Right.
And everything she reads, she twists into her own weird, funky brand of prophecy.
Wow, if she's interpreting everything, I wonder what she would say when she saw an Arby's commercial.
Only you. Only you. This is what I live with, y'all. just so you know.
Well.
But in her mind, Suzan's followers, which at this point was nobody, they were destined to become God's warriors in an imminent battle against the forces of evil. She believed her psychic powers were growing stronger now that she no longer had a husband and children to weigh her down. They were keeping her from her destiny.
Wow.
And as Suzan's delusions deepened, her sense of power began to twist like a country back road. She started to worry that instead of being an angelic warrior, maybe she was actually a witch possessed by the devil. Okay. And the longer this thought festered in her head, the further she drifted from reality. At one point, she believed someone had drilled a hole into her skull, a sign, she thought, of demonic activity. There's no hole in her skull.
Wow.
But she claimed she could feel the devil slithering around inside her mind.
Man.
No, Susan, that's the drugs amplifying your psychosis, honey.
Wow.
Now, her two children kind of see what's going on, and they begged her to see a psychiatrist because they're really worried. You know, mom's gone off the deep end.
Yeah.
And eventually she did, and surprise, surprise, the doctor prescribed medication for her and set her up with regular appointments. But when nothing changed in her head, Susan became convinced that the psychiatrist was trying to steal her psychic powers, her supposed deeper understanding of religion and the end of times. She's smarter than her doctor.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand. She's way above his pay grade and what's going on in the world kind of thing.
Man.
Now, at that point, her kids were like, we're stumped. We don't know what to do about mom. They were living with their dad. Of course, he had sole custody, and they disconnected completely from Susan. And she would never see them again. But Susan didn't seem to care. She's free from being a wife and mother, and she's living off her trust fund and alimony. She starts throwing money around. She's shopping, going to elaborate parties, getting high, bringing home strange men. She's a liberated woman. But she's not only free from her family, she's also free from her sanity and, in truth, reality itself.
Right.
Even the folks she was getting high with thought her religious ramblings were nuts. They were like, this woman is cuckoo cuckoo.
Yeah.
But Susan decided what she really needed was some true believers, her own little flock of warriors, because in her head, without followers, she would perish in the end of times, just like all the other clueless mortals. And honey, time was running out. She thought, I don't have a whole lot of time to fulfill this destiny. I'm this prophet from God.
Right.
Then in 1979, Susan met James Carson at a party, and James was a man searching for the meaning of life. He was drifting through life like a tumbleweed. And recently he had been divorced, and he's wrestling with his own identity, and James found himself inexplicably drawn to Susan and her so-called supernatural powers. So he's really very impressionable. He's kind of in a deep space where he's, gotten a divorce, he's depressed, and he meets this woman.
I don't care how depressed or divorced you are. If you ran into somebody like that, I think your first impulse would be like, run away, run away.
Yeah. I mean, even if the people she's doing drugs with think that she's off the rails, that has to tell you something, right?
Big time.
The very first time they met, Susan looked him dead in the eye and told him she was changing his name. From that moment on, he'd be known as Michael, and she claimed they'd been lovers in a past life, that she could see the future, and together they had a divine mission straight from God himself.
Wow.
We're on a mission from God.
Yeah. I got a pack of cigarettes, sunglasses, and a full tank of gas.
It's like the Blues Brothers. Michael, formerly James, was born in 1950 and grew up in a privileged home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a lot like Susan did in Arizona. He's 9 years younger than she is, which isn't much considering she was sleeping with teenage boys, right?
I was about ready to bring that up.
James, who I will now call Michael, always felt connected to nature, something he credited to the Native Americans he'd encountered growing up. And his dad was an oil executive, but he came from a long line of sheriffs and gunslingers in the old wild, wild West.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And his family didn't mind shooting a man or two if it was deemed necessary. That's called foreshadowing. Yep. When Michael was a kid, he got dealt kind of a rough hand. He was diagnosed with Perthes disease, a rare condition that softened the joints in his pelvis. And little Michael walked with a limp, bless his heart. And then doctors told him he couldn't walk at all. They wanted his hip to heal, so they put him on strict bed rest as a kid. And suddenly the outdoors, where he always loved to be and he found peace in his life, it's off limits. And for 3 years, he's pretty much a shut-in. He's trapped inside in his bed when all he wanted to do was go outside and run around with his shoes off and feel the grass under his feet and be in the trees. So he read, and Lord, did he read. Anything and everything he could get his hands on. He dove into history, philosophy, and politics. But the more he read about religion, the more he wanted to distance himself from his half-Jewish heritage. Now, eventually, he decided all religion was bunk anyway. And the United States, well, they were all doing it wrong. And by the time he could walk again, he'd morphed into a teenage atheist and full-blown Marxist.
It's always amazing to me when somebody decides, it's everybody's decision to believe what they want to believe, but when they decide that everyone else in the entire universe is wrong except them.
Yeah.
It's... would you say that's narcissistic?
Well, let's think about who his perfect match is about to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, while his classmates are off flirting and going to drive-ins, Michael was hanging around with hippies soaking up their counterculture ideas. And they were outsiders just like him, and he loved that anti-establishment vibe and life. Mm-hmm. In high school, he starts smoking pot like it's his part-time job, and even founded a chapter of the Students for a Democratic Society. By graduation, while other kids were picking out colleges, Michael was out marching in the streets, protesting anything and everything. By 1968, Michael had packed up his troubles and left home, landing smack dab in San Francisco, where he joined the Flower Power protests against the Vietnam War.
Up there in Haight-Ashbury.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, eventually, he enrolled at the University of Iowa. He majored in Chinese philosophy while dabbling in history and religion. And let me tell you, he was loud and proud about his opinions in class. And the professors were like, I need an Advil after this kid. Yeah. Every single class, he was very outspoken and he wouldn't shut up.
Shut up!
He campaigned hard for Bobby Kennedy's presidential run, putting his whole heart into it. So when Bobby was assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan on June 5th, 1968, Michael was devastated, and the world around him felt darker than ever. He thinks everything in the world is bad and everybody's doing it wrong, and so he puts everything into this presidential run for Bobby, and then he's assassinated.
Right.
He's very dejected, and he turned to stronger drugs, not just weed, but psychedelics like mescaline. And on one trip, he swore the sky and buildings were pulsing around him like they had a heartbeat of their own. Well, I bet.
Yeah.
But one day while he's on a trip, he stumbles into a church and had what he called a religious experience.
Yeah, there you go.
That spiritual awakening flipped his worldview on its head, and Michael was no longer an atheist. He was ready to march down the road to salvation. So it just took one psychedelic trip, stumbling into a church, and suddenly he's like, wait a minute.
A little mescaline, a little church pew.
Yeah, maybe this is what I need to be doing.
You're good to go.
Between sermons and college lectures, he found love, a girl named Lynn. They start dating their sophomore year, and before long, wedding bells were ringing. And after graduation in the early 70s, they moved to Phoenix, where Lynn began her teaching career. She was a teacher. And soon after, they welcomed their first child, a baby girl named Jennifer. Now, Michael was a good dad, at least in the beginning. He would read bedtime stories to little Jennifer and call her his princess, like a good doting father would. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't take long after she was born for Michael's darkness in his head and his depression to creep in. It sort of swallowed him whole. He became like mean, and he couldn't hold down a job. But he kept right on doing drugs. Couldn't hold down a job, but he can do drugs.
Seems to be a common denominator here for a lot of people. Yeah.
By this time, he and his wife, Lynn, were trying to hold their marriage together with duct tape and prayers, and neither one wanted to throw in the towel. But as his drug use escalated, so did his problems. And, of course, he's not just smoking weed. He's dealing it now, too.
Yeah, jeez.
Then in 1977, everything snapped. What started as a simple argument turned violent. Michael hit his wife, Lynn, so hard she dropped a glass that she was holding. It shattered on the kitchen floor, and their little girl, Jennifer, she's just a baby, she crawled into the broken glass and cut herself. And that was Lynn's breaking point. She's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
She packed up that night, took Jennifer, and never looked back. And not long after, she files for divorce. Now, Michael sinks into a deeper depression. He felt worthless, unfulfilled. He was drifting through life with no anchor. He partied too hard, took too many drugs. And at just 26 years old, he's running on empty. Then on Thanksgiving night in 1977, he met 36-year-old Suzan Barnes at a party. Suzan was high as a kite on acid, and when she laid eyes on him, her whole body lit up with tingles. She felt like the universe had handpicked him just for her.
Of course she felt that way.
She changed his name to Michael after the archangel himself, and of course, with both of them high as Georgia pines, they fell instantly in love.
Of course they did.
Suzan wanted him to come home with her that very night. She told him she'd been wandering the astral plane for thousands of years, just waiting for his soul to find hers.
Oh, dream weaver.
I was just about to say, honey, I didn't wait all that long for your soul to find mine. But that was, that's pretty romantic. She's been waiting thousands of years.
On the astral plane.
On the astral plane.
Wow.
From then on, Suzan...
I wonder if that's anything like the DMV.
That's a really long wait. From then on, Suzan and Michael spent every night together tripping on drugs while Suzan claimed she was receiving divine messages. But here's the kicker. Suzan thought Christians were a bunch of hypocrites who followed an untrustworthy doctrine. She told Michael that the real God who brought them together was Allah. And now, in her mind, she finally had a warrior. Remember, she had this new religion. She just needed a warrior.
Yeah.
And I looked it up, and Archangel Michael, who she named him after, is mentioned in the Quran. Quote, whoever is an enemy to Allah and his angels and his messengers, and Jibril, which is Gabriel, and Mikael, which is Michael, then verily Allah is an enemy to the disbelievers, end quote. So together, Suzan and Michael are going to strike down the forces of darkness.
All by themselves.
All by themselves. Just the two of them, while they're high on psychedelics.
There you go.
And Michael hung onto every rambling word as Suzan preached about an upcoming holy war with him by her side. And she believed her psychic visions were getting stronger by the day. And those voices her psychiatrist had called psychosis, well, to Suzan, they're just direct orders from Allah.
Wow.
But remember, Suzan still feared her powers were corrupted by a demon, that maybe she was a witch under Satan's spell. But Michael just looked at her all calm and righteous and said, no, babe,
Yeah.
You're blessed with this gift.
Pass the joint.
Pass it on.
Yeah. Jeez.
No, honey, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect just the way you are.
I don't think that was what Billy Joel had in mind when he wrote that tune.
But Suzan looks at him and she's like, okay, if you say so, you're right. If you say I am, then I believe you. In the summer of 1978, these two fools sold every last one of their worldly possessions and hopped a flight to Europe because, according to Suzan, Allah told her to. She also told Michael that Allah said they'd get married and have a baby. So when they landed in London on the eve of the summer solstice, they tied the knot. Well, kind of in their own special way. No courthouse, no officiant.
Sure.
Just the two of them declaring themselves as husband and wife. And some sources said that they did it under the full moon at Stonehenge. And others said it was just in a dingy London hotel room.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the dingy hotel.
Either way, they believed they were married. And to make it official in their minds, they changed their last name to Bear.
Okay.
Because Michael loved bears as a kid. Bless his heart.
Good thing he didn't like snails. Jeez.
And wouldn't you know, Suzan turns up pregnant. After that, Suzan's delusions cranked up to 11. She felt even more oppressed by evil and claimed now that she could see witches everywhere. Anybody who crossed her or even mildly annoyed her, they're a witch. Don't cross Suzan.
Yeah.
You're a witch.
Wow.
As they wandered through Europe, Suzan became convinced the entire continent was crawling with witches and drenched in the devil's shadow. But their grand trip took a dark turn in Israel when Suzan miscarried the child she believed Allah had sent her. And of course, they needed somebody to blame.
Right.
According to Suzan, it wasn't the drugs that she was taking that caused her to miscarry. It was the witches, and they were gonna pay for it.
Wow.
They came back to the States, and that's when Suzan dropped the ultimate bomb on Michael. They were now witch hunters. This was Allah's mission for them, to rid the world of evil. Wow. They needed to evangelize, recruit warriors, and prepare for the coming holy war because those witches, they would fight back. So off they went up the California coast, selling drugs, couch surfing, and preaching their witch hunting gospel to anybody who would listen.
Jeez.
By 1980, they'd landed in San Francisco, setting up camp in Haight-Ashbury. Suzan took Michael to a party one night hosted by somebody she barely knew. And the moment they walked in, Suzan said she was overwhelmed with nausea and fear because there were too many witches in one place.
Wow.
But then she saw her, a young woman in a black dress with an orange mohawk, 22-year-old Keryn Denise Barnes. She was born on February 13th, 1953 in Georgia. Keryn was a pretty farm girl with a soft Southern accent and a gentle spirit. She'd moved to San Francisco to chase her dream of becoming an actress. People described her as delightful, beautiful, and trusting to a fault. At the party that night, Suzan told Keryn all about her psychic gifts, and Keryn shared that she was clairvoyant. And Michael liked Keryn right away. He wanted to get to know her better, if you know what I mean. Young Keryn was always open to new experiences and asked Suzan and Michael if they wanted to move in with her soon after they all meet. And Suzan and Michael packed up and moved into Keryn's basement apartment at 825A Schrader Street, just 2 blocks south of Haight Street. And funny thing, when Keryn moved in that January of 1981, she told her landlord it was against her religion to touch money. So the welfare department had to handle her rent. And the whole not touching money thing is more like a Buddhist thing where they detach from material possessions and dependence on money.
I didn't know that.
But I don't know if she was a Buddhist or not, but she didn't touch money. The welfare department paid her rent.
Okay.
Anyway, Keryn has these two new roommates, and living together, Suzan wasted no time teaching Keryn about Islam, or rather, Suzan's twisted witch hunting version of it. And for a while, things were peaceful. Keryn was intrigued by Suzan and Michael's mission to rid San Francisco of witches. But it didn't last. The longer they lived together, the more Suzan resented Keryn for being young and beautiful. November 1980 rolls around, and Ronald Reagan is elected president. And Suzan and Michael claim they felt a great evil settle over America.
Jeez.
But Keryn was her own woman with her own ideas. And honey, Suzan did not like that one little bit. Add to it that Keryn carried herself with confidence and sometimes a little smug tilt of her chin, and it rubbed Suzan's last nerve raw. So she's not just like falling in line to be Suzan's soldier, and Suzan doesn't like that.
Right.
But that's not the only thing getting under Suzan's skin. She saw how Keryn and Michael got along so well. And how Michael was really kind of flirting with Keryn all the time. And now, in Suzan's twisted version of Islam, Michael was allowed to take more than one wife. And she's supposed to support that. But let's be real. Suzan was not about to let that happen.
Yeah.
Michael was her soulmate, her guardian angel, her chosen one. And Keryn needed to stay in her own clairvoyant lane. So naturally, in Suzan's warped mind, Keryn became
a witch.
A witch.
Yeah.
And not just any witch. No, ma'am. Keryn was suddenly the most powerful witch in all of San Francisco.
The grand poobah of witches.
Suzan claimed that ever since they moved in with Keryn, her powers and her body had felt weaker. And the only explanation was there was a witch draining her strength. And Keryn had to die. And Michael had to be the one to do it.
Jeez.
So in March, right after Keryn turned 23, Suzan and Michael cornered her and told her flat out, there's a witch in this house. And Keryn just kind of looked at him and said, well, it's not me.
Yeah.
They start arguing, and Suzan loses it. She screams at Michael, quote, kill the witch, end quote.
Jeez.
So he grabbed a frying pan and smashed Keryn over the head.
Ouch.
Yeah. Then Suzan lunged forward with a knife, stabbing Keryn over and over, while Michael kept swinging this frying pan. I do want to say there was another source that said they just killed her in her sleep, that it wasn't after an argument. Regardless, with every stab, Suzan swore she could feel her power coming back to her. When it was finally over, Michael looked down and thought, oh, Lord, what have I done?
Yeah.
But Suzan was quick to reassure him. She told him they had fulfilled a prophecy by killing San Francisco's most powerful witch. But reality starts to creep in, and they grabbed their things and got the heck fire out of there, hitchhiking north. Suzan believed Allah had so much more work for them to do, so many witches left to kill. They left Keryn's lifeless body right there in the kitchen.
Wow.
Keryn's body will be discovered in her apartment on March 7th, 1981. Evidence suggested that she'd been murdered by someone she knew, and Suzan and Michael were prime suspects. After killing Keryn, these two hitchhike all the way up to Southern Oregon. They didn't have a dime to their names, but drugs? Yeah, they had plenty of those. Nobody was going to hire them, so they started living off the land, hiding out in the woods like unhinged outlaws until they stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. I mean, it sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
They settle in, they start doing drugs and loving each other in that warped, apocalyptic way only they understood.
Right.
But Michael's guilty conscience started gnawing at him. Was killing witches really worth spending the rest of his life in prison if they're caught?
Yeah.
But Suzan wasn't worried. She told him, quote, Allah will protect us, baby. We're just doing his work, end quote. Just out here doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, killing people.
Yeah.
Jeez.
She kept smoking her weed, dropping acid, and sinking deeper into her delusions. In her mind, they weren't killers on the lam, they were warriors, starting the holy war that would end the world as we know it. Problem was, they'd only killed one witch, and now they were stranded in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, plotting their next move. But now it wasn't only Suzan who could spot witches. Oh no, Michael thought he could see them too. He'd been reading the book of Revelation and decided that the master of all witches was Satan himself, whose number was 666. Now, remember, after Reagan was elected, they felt this great evil overcome America. And they think Ronald Reagan is Satan himself.
Oh, jeez.
So somehow in Michael's scrambled up brain, 666 meant President Reagan was the devil walking among us. And naturally, Michael decided it was his destiny to rid the world of the President of the United States.
Oh, man.
And Suzan, she was like, sure, I can get behind that. Let's do it. The problem was, in March of 1981, John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate Reagan and failed. And Michael thought, well, damn, now I can't do it. I'm just going to be a copycat. Somebody stole my thunder. Meanwhile, Suzan had other things on her mind, like food. They'd been holed up in that cabin for a month, and they were out of money, out of food, and worst of all, they were out of drugs. So Michael decided he needed to go to Los Angeles to stock up on supplies that would get them through the coming apocalypse. Suzan didn't want him out of her sight, but she was too hungry to argue. She decided she would fast while he was away, trusting her psychic vision that food would come. I mean, that's a lot of manifesting just for food.
Yeah.
Michael hitchhiked down to L.A. in May of 1981 and went straight to Venice Beach, where he was drawn to the hippie crowd and where he had easy access to drugs. But instead of buying food or supplies like a sensible cult leader in training would do, he got himself some paper and markers and started making signs about the evils of Ronald Reagan. Then he took to spray painting bathroom walls up and down Venice Beach with his anti-Reagan rants. And in the middle of his graffiti spree, Michael has an epiphany. His true calling was to make the world see the truth. And days later, while he was still on his manic mission, he suddenly remembered, oh yeah, Suzan's back at the cabin starving to death.
I forgot about her.
He panics and he starts hitchhiking north, dumpster diving along the way for scraps of food to bring back to her.
Jeez.
By the way, they are vegan, so he can't just bring any old thing back to her. When he finally got there, Suzan was so malnourished, she was in a full-blown delusional state, screaming at demons only she could see. She believed Satan himself had come to possess her. But after Michael fed her some dumpster leftovers, she calmed down a little bit. So maybe she was just hangry.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't ever get hangry, do I, honey?
Never. Never.
Chris is grumpy. I just need to feed her. Just put a cookie in her mouth and she's going to be okay. Exactly. Blood sugar's low. Just give her a cookie. Yep. And once she was lucid enough, he told her all about his grand vision, his calling to warn the world about Reagan and to evangelize Islam across L.A. and beyond. He was going to write and distribute a manifesto. I mean,
wow.
Who reads these manifestos? Doesn't it always seem like somebody who's like holed up in a cabin somewhere in the middle of nowhere is writing a manifesto?
The only time a manifesto is read is after the criminal is captured or killed, and then they read it on the news. That's about it.
Yep, they release it, and everybody's like, he's one brick shy of a load.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, Michael's a couple bricks shy of a load.
Yeah.
In the summer of 1981, Suzan and Michael got what they called a, quote, sign from God, end quote, or maybe it was just the park ranger telling them to get the hell out. Either way, they packed up their ragged belongings and hit the road, planning to hitchhike to the southwest. But first, since they were running low on weed, they swung through Northern California to beg their old grower friends for a stash, promising to pay them back. Spoiler alert, they never do.
You think?
For the last 4 months of 1981, they drifted through Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, selling weed to keep themselves fed, while Michael worked feverishly on his so-called manifesto. Now, this masterpiece was a mishmash of what little he knew about religion, sprinkled with a whole lot of Suzan's crazy. It included descriptions of Suzan's visions, step-by-step instructions on how to kill witches, and a hefty dose of world order nonsense about how Satan controlled religion and the government.
Is this manifesto still available to read?
It might be.
I would love to read this thing.
Michael wrote that the only way to change the world was through a holy war and the apocalypse, specifically a nuclear holocaust.
Oh.
It's real uplifting stuff.
Jeez. So Disney didn't pick up the option.
No, Disney does not want to make this a movie.
All right.
But there's more. The manifesto also included a list of assassination targets they believed would trigger this massive world war. And among them were Margaret Thatcher, Pope John Paul II, Johnny Carson,
what?
And Ronald Reagan.
Not Johnny Carson. Come on, man.
Yeah, they figured knocking off the Tonight Show host was just as critical as taking out the president or the Pope.
Oh, man.
Go figure.
I guess.
Yeah, they didn't want him doing...
Karnak.
Karnak. Exactly. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. That's why I need you around, honey.
So I remember all the old shows.
Yes. But they believed these people were fighting against their divine agenda. And without them in the way, they'd be free to spread their twisted doctrine across the world. By early 1982, the manifesto was finished. Right about the time they ran out of money.
Yeah.
Again. So off they go, heading back to California with their copies of their manifesto tucked into their bags. They're looking for followers and, of course, a new hustle to keep the drugs flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And while hitchhiking, they got picked up by a driver who offered them a place to stay on his property. In exchange, they handed over some of their weed. It was a makeshift commune deep in the Big Sur woods. It's full of tents and tree houses where these people were living off-grid. And Suzan and Michael thought they'd hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
They even thought they'd found a new recruit, a fresh disciple for their holy war. Now, the name of this person I couldn't find. It's never been disclosed. But as always, it didn't last long, and Suzan, being Suzan, couldn't get along with him for more than a hot second before deciding he was...
a witch.
A witch.
Jeez.
So Michael and Suzan used what little money they had left to buy supplies from a gas station, gasoline, rags, soda bottles. Back in some grimy motel room, they sit in the floor and make Molotov cocktails, and they're prepping themselves to burn the witches out.
Wow.
They head back into the woods and into this tent city, and Michael starts walking around setting fire to whatever he could find.
Wow.
But while creeping through the tents, he stumbled onto one that was empty. But inside this empty tent was a .38 caliber pistol. And like any good cult killer in training, he pockets it without a second thought.
Right.
So they burned down this tent town, but they didn't hurt anybody, only destroyed what structures were there.
Where was everyone?
They weren't in the tents.
Huh.
They weren't there.
Strange.
Or they ran from the fire, is my thought. Michael and Suzan kept hitchhiking and wandering their way through California until they landed in Humboldt County in the spring of 1982. Now, Humboldt County goes by many names. It's known as part of the Emerald Triangle alongside Mendocino and Trinity counties. It's also the home to the Redwoods, boasting the largest remaining old-growth coastal redwood forests in the world, including Redwood National and State Parks.
I've been there, and it's truly amazing.
It is on my bucket list, and Rob and I have actually talked about taking a little vacay.
Yep.
So I can go see them.
Yeah, I'd love to see it again.
But for our purposes today, we're going to call Humboldt County what the locals call it, Murder Mountain. And Murder Mountain has earned its name thanks to all the disappearances, murders, and drug cartel activity over the years. It's crawling with illegal marijuana growers. If you want to watch folks vanish into thin air, the 2018 Netflix documentary Murder Mountain will paint that picture beautifully for you. So go watch it.
I'm not so sure I want to go back out there again.
Humboldt is full of hippies, survivalists, pot growers, and folks who just don't want to be found. And it's a place filled with outlaw culture and entire pot empires that are hidden underneath the canopy of all these trees. And it's also a graveyard of missing person cases.
Wow.
Nobody bothers to count the missing persons or the bodies anymore.
Gee.
So for Michael and Suzan, it's the perfect home sweet home.
Yeah. Oh, man.
They managed to find work and a place to stay on a cannabis farm, but they weren't the only ones living there, and these two had about as much charm as a rattlesnake at a picnic. And the work was hard, and the days were hot, and they are newbies, and most of these seasoned workers thought Michael and Suzan were crazy. And that's saying something in a place like Humboldt, right?
Yeah.
Suzan didn't like anything anybody did, and folks mostly tolerated them until 26-year-old Clark Stevens showed up. That's when things went from hell to hell in a handbasket. Clark Randall Stevens was born on July 29th, 1955 in Riverside County, California. There's not a lot known about him before he becomes a part of our story, but by the time he's 20, he's working as a laborer on a marijuana farm in the Alder Point area of Humboldt County. And Clark was a friend and a recent business partner of the farm's owner. So he's not a newbie, and he's got a little bit of cred, right?
Sure,
know?
Yeah.
And Suzan and Michael are sort of newbies.
Right.
Now, when Clark arrived, he ruffled feathers from the moment he set foot on the property, and Michael and Suzan took one look at him and sized him up as arrogant. But more than that, he was from Los Angeles, and in their minds, L.A. was crawling with witches. To them, Clark was the evil of the modern world, walking around with his chest out and his hair slicked back, just like he owned the place. He, had a lot of confidence.
Right.
And soon Michael and Suzan were involved in screaming matches with Clark. But Clark wasn't about to back down. He pushed right back, matching their crazy blow for blow. He was like, "You want crazy? I'll give you crazy."
Yeah. I'll see you're crazy and raise you one.
One day, Clark insulted Suzan while Michael was off working somewhere else on the mountain. And boy, did that light a fire under her.
Yeah, I'll bet.
She ran straight to Michael, huffing and puffing about Clark's behavior. She told Michael that by insulting her, Clark was spitting on Islam itself. She reminded Michael that Allah had given him a gun back in Big Sur Woods.
Right.
And she's like, "You got that gun for a reason, and that's this right here. This is it. This is the reason."
Jeez.
She told him it was his religious duty to defend her honor, to protect her, to rid the world of this witch. And because in Suzan's twisted mind, that's exactly what Allah wanted. So she's like, "Look, you can't go against what Allah wants."
Yeah.
Early one May morning in 1982, Michael tucked his pistol into the back of his jeans and he heads out to work like it's just any other day. And later that morning, he and Suzan bump into Clark out on the farm and they tell him, "We need to have a chat." And they lead him to this secluded corner of the property, well out of earshot of the other workers, right?
Yeah.
Michael pulled the gun on Clark, and Suzan just about lost her mind with excitement. She's laughing. I read that she was cackling. She was screaming and egging Michael on like she's a cheerleader.
Jeez.
She's like a cheerleader from hell.
Yeah.
She called Clark a witch, a demon, and even accused him of sexually assaulting her. But let's be clear.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of that outside of Suzan's twisted imagination.
I have not seen pictures of her yet, but I'm going to assume that she's not like a real big looker.
She's not a looker.
Yeah.
Michael did exactly what Suzan ordered. He fired several shots into Clark, dropping him dead right there at their feet. But Suzan wasn't done. She told Michael they had to burn the body because, according to her, that was the only way to make sure a witch stayed good and dead. Now, they never burned Keryn's body in San Francisco, so that's something new.
Right.
So Suzan gets a can of kerosene. She pours it all over Clark's body. She smiles at Michael, and they light a match. And they watch him go up in flames. And when his body wouldn't burn any further, they covered the charred remains with chicken fertilizer and left him there in the woods like garbage.
Gee whiz.
For the next 2 days, they went back to work as if nothing had happened, but paranoia started to eat at them. So they packed up what few possessions they had and they hit the road. They spent a night in a nearby town, but as soon as the sun came up, they were back out on the highway thumbing for a ride. Before they could get very far, get this, a police car pulled up beside them somewhere in Northern California. And Michael and Suzan are like, oh,
yeah.
They freeze.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out which direction to go when this cop pulls up and leans out of his window and asked them for directions.
Oh, really?
He wants directions to the very pot farm, to the very cannabis farm they had just left.
Jeez.
The one where Clark's burned body was hidden.
Wow.
They're giving the directions.
Man.
And their hearts are like beating out of their chest, but somehow they keep their cool and they give the officer directions all right. They send him off in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And as soon as he drove away, they knew they couldn't risk staying on the highway. So they ducked into the woods and kept moving on foot, camping under the stars at night, just like witch killers might do.
Yeah.
They woke up one morning to the sound of police tromping through the woods, calling out for a lost hiker. I mean, they keep having these brushes with the law.
Yeah.
But Suzan and Michael, paranoid as they were convinced the cops were there for them. And they panicked and they grabbed what they could and they ran, leaving their bags behind.
Really?
Like fools.
Whoa.
And they didn't even run together. Suzan bolted deeper into the woods. Michael took off back toward the road. But they always had a plan to meet up. If something bad happened, they had a plan that they would meet back up again.
Okay.
Now, it didn't take long for the search dogs to sniff out these two abandoned backpacks. Inside, police find marijuana, bullets, a stolen ID, and Michael's rambling-ass manifesto.
Oops.
And let me tell you, it wasn't hard for them to figure out whose bag it was because Michael, in all his genius, put his name right there on the manifesto as the author.
It's like one of the Bless Your Hearts I did where the person, the drug person put on their bag not full of drugs.
Well, he authors this manifesto. He doesn't want anybody stealing his credit. I mean, John Hinckley Jr. already stole his thunder by trying to assassinate Reagan.
Right.
Yeah. So he's got his name on this manifesto because he doesn't want anybody taking credit for that.
Yeah.
It had the name Michael Bear on the manifesto. Now, on its own, his scribblings might have just seemed like the ravings of a lunatic, which he is.
Right.
But that kill list, the one with assassination targets like Margaret Thatcher, Pope John Paul II, Johnny Carson, and Ronald Reagan, that caught the authorities' attention real quick.
Yeah.
Especially since Reagan had already been shot by John Hinckley Jr.
Right.
And they're not about to take any chances. So they reported this manifesto up the chain, and before long, the FBI knew all about Michael Bear. He was now an official national security threat.
Wow.
They lifted his fingerprints from the manuscript and discovered that Michael Bear was actually James Carson. Meanwhile, back up in Humboldt County, a dog stumbled across Clark Stevens' charred remains. Police were called out, and as they started questioning the other farm workers, Michael's name came up again and again, and he shot straight to the top of their suspect list for this murder. But by then, Michael was already in Los Angeles thinking he'd slipped away clean. But as luck would have it, he fit the description of a suspect in an unrelated rape investigation.
Oh.
And police see him on the road and they bring him in for questioning. I mean, how many brushes with the law, right?
Yeah. Your luck's running out. You might as well just forget it now.
They tossed him in the back of their cruiser, but they didn't frisk him properly.
Oh.
So Michael has this gun tucked into the back of his waistband.
Jeez.
So with his hands handcuffed behind him, he pulls out this gun from his waistband and he stuffs it deep in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
Now, at the station, he gave the police a fake name. He said he was Richard Arata, and they hauled him into an interrogation room. They started asking him questions to rule him out in this rape case. And that's when Michael realized coming to L.A. was a big mistake. Big. Huge.
Huge.
So he got the heck fire out of there. I mean, they let him go. They're like, yo, you're not our rapist. They let him go. He hitchhikes his way out of Los Angeles. He thought he'd escaped scot-free, but when the officers found the gun he'd hidden in their patrol car, they realized, oops, we've let a dangerous man walk right out the front door.
Right.
So LAPD sent out a statewide APB, but all they had was the fake name he'd given them, Richard Arata.
Right.
And the alert went out with his physical description, but nobody knew exactly who he was. 600 miles away, back in Humboldt County, detectives were working the Clark Stevens death. They interviewed workers, sifted through Clark's belongings, and started connecting the dots. And they're saying, who are Suzan and Michael Bear?
Mm-hmm.
And every time Michael had been stopped by police or interacted with authorities under a fake name, a record was created. Mugshots, fingerprints, address info, and piece by piece, LAPD untangled his web of aliases and finally pinned down his real identity. Carson is Bear.
Right.
So they're like, this dude, we've finally put it all together.
It's ironic that they wanted to kill Johnny Carson.
You're still stuck on that.
I am. It really upsets me.
They matched the ballistics from Clark Stevens' murder to the gun Michael had left so graciously in the back of that LAPD patrol car. And by the time those results came through, Michael was already on his way to meet back up with Suzan at their prearranged spot in Sonora, about 100 miles east of San Francisco. And yep, these two fools reunited. Now, you'd think with the FBI, the local cops, and half of California looking for them, they'd lay low, maybe head back to the woods and hide.
Yeah.
No.
Of course not.
Suzan's vision said it was time for the holy war. They needed to complete their divine mission, and even if they died doing it, they would be martyrs. So they hit the road again, heading for Portland. They crashed with a friend for a few weeks, but soon decided it was the wrong place to be. And apparently Suzan's mystical spidey senses had led them astray. This is wrong.
Okay.
And back to California they went. By the end of 1982, 7 months after they'd murdered Clark Stevens, Michael somehow got his hands on yet another handgun. They were wandering aimlessly when they ended up in Bakersfield on January 11th, 1983, stuck on the side of the road, and they tried hitchhiking, but nobody was picking them up. That is, until a truck made a U-turn and came back for them near Santa Rosa, California. Their new driver was 30-year-old Jon Hellyar. Jon Charles Hellyar was born on November 15th, 1952, to Glenn and Florence Hellyar in Chicopee, Hampton County, Massachusetts. Not a lot is known about Jon before this or how he made his way from Massachusetts to California, but lots of people came to California looking for freedom and peace, and Jon was known as a good-natured, kind, and helpful man who often picked up hitchhikers. Gotcha. So this isn't new for him.
Okay.
As they walked up to his truck, Suzan leaned in and whispered to Michael, quote, "He's a witch. We need to kill him." End quote. The driver, Jon, had been a decent human being. He told them he was heading to Santa Rosa and that they could crash at his friend's place when they got there. So they climbed into his truck. And during this drive, they argue with Jon over his music choices. Well, I'm sorry. If you're the driver, you get to pick the music. That's the rule, isn't it?
My house, my rules.
Isn't that the rule, that the driver gets to pick the music?
Of course.
I think so. Somebody's going to email me and tell me I'm wrong, but
you're not wrong.
But they're arguing over his choice of music. And when his leg accidentally brushed against Suzan's, they're in a truck, so they're in a cab.
Right.
She's in the middle.
Right.
His knee accidentally brushes against hers. She's ready to kill him right then and there.
Good grief.
She gave Michael the look. You know, the one that said, it's time. It's the one I give you when we're out at a party. And I'm like, can we go home, please? I can't people anymore. I give him the look. So she gives Michael this look. It's time. And Michael leaned over Suzan and yanked the steering wheel, like really hard to the right. And Jon's fighting to keep control. But when Michael pulled out the gun, Jon threw his hands up in surrender. And he pulled the truck over and he bolted. He's trying to escape. And Suzan chased after him. She's like screaming. And Michael apparently is walking very calmly behind her. He's raising this gun. He's taking aim at Jon. And Suzan came up behind Jon and pulled a knife from her bag. Now, poor Jon didn't know who he needed to worry about more, the woman with the blade or the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
And before he could decide, Suzan stabbed him in the back. Then she stepped away like she was clearing the way for Michael to shoot him, like Michael's big finale.
Right.
But Michael hesitates. And in that split second, Jon took off running back to his truck like he's going to hop in the cab and just drive away.
Right.
And he's trying to use this truck on the way as a shield against the gunfire. Then for the next 10 minutes, 10 full minutes, these two fools chased Jon around that truck. Like, it's like some twisted Benny Hill sketch.
Jeez.
They're like the Keystone Cops.
Yeah.
Cars are whizzing by while all of this is happening. It's 10 minutes. And drivers are slowing down. They're rubbernecking like, what in the Mississippi hell is going on over there?
Yeah.
And in all this chaos, Suzan is stabbing Jon again and again. And finally, Michael pulled himself together and he shot Jon multiple times, all while Suzan is cheering him on. But all these witnesses in their cars, one of them had the good sense to pull over and find a place to call the police. And as Suzan and Michael stood over Jon's lifeless body, they can hear the sirens like in the distance. They're coming for him. I'm telling you, it's like a movie.
Good grief.
So they're thinking fast. They drag Jon's body off the side of the road. Then they bolt back to the truck. Michael barely got his behind into the passenger seat before she peels out of there like a bat out of hell. Mm-hmm. And the cops spotted Jon Hellyar's body, and they're hot on the trail. And police radio across 2 counties. And it just lit up with the announcement that the killers were driving a stolen truck, and the chase was on with Suzan behind the wheel. And they're just barreling down highways and back roads, weaving through traffic like they thought they were in Smokey and the Bandit. But Suzan lost control of the truck. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
And she crashed it into a ditch. And what did these 2 geniuses do next? They jump out and they ran for the woods. But they didn't get far. Police finally had the self-proclaimed witch hunters and murderers of 3 innocent people in cuffs. Now, they were charged with Jon Hellyar's murder and soon after Clark Stevens' murder, too. By the spring of 1983, Suzan, Miss Super Psychic herself, refused to work with her court-appointed attorney. She just sat there saying nothing. And meanwhile, Michael, the great author of that rambling manifesto, was mad as a hornet that the press wasn't paying any attention to him. He wanted headlines. He wanted the words of his manifesto broadcast far and wide. And they're just like, dude, we don't care about you or your manifesto.
Yeah.
All we care about is that we have you because you've got this kill list. So we got you and we don't care.
Right.
But when nothing was turning out the way he thought it would, in March of 1983, 3 months after their arrest, Michael decided to confess to the 1981 murder of Keryn Barnes, a case that the police hadn't connected to them yet. And he offered them this information in exchange for one thing. You want to guess what it was?
Not to be a witch hunter?
He wanted his chance to speak to the press.
Oh, jeez.
He wanted his big moment, and they negotiated for weeks. And finally, in April of 1983, the DA granted him his minute of fame. And journalists from Santa Rosa and San Francisco showed up at the jail for this so-called press conference, and nobody knew what in the ever-loving heckfire these two were going to say. A few media outlets actually covered it, but more out of just sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
Michael got up there and prattled on for hours about their religion and how complex it was and how the world needed a holy war. He rambled about witches and their evil ways. He went on and on about Susan's psychic abilities like she was some Walmart brand oracle of Delphi. And this wasn't a quick soundbite, y'all. This press conference dragged on for over 6 hours.
Oh.
6 hours of Michael detailing all their murders and explaining their twisted theology. And when it was finally over, the two witch hunters strutted out of there like they'd won an Oscar. They were very proud of everything that they had just done. And Susan never said a word. She just sat there, just letting her disciple, Michael, champion their moment in the spotlight.
Man.
Then after all that 6-hour nonsense, when it came time to face the music for Keryn Barnes' murder, what did Susan and Michael plead?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Of course.
At their trial in 1984, Michael claimed self-defense because she was a witch. And the jury took one look at him and decided he was 2 sandwiches shy of a picnic. They found him guilty, and that's when Michael stood up and started shouting, quote, "Down with the queen, down with the queen,"
what?
end quote.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, what the heck in heck, man?
Okay.
And Susan, she stood up, tossed her hair, and screamed, quote, "What is my crime? To be beautiful?" End quote.
Oh, Lord. Oh, man.
Bless their hearts.
Oh, good night.
They were sentenced to 25 years to life for Keryn's murder. Then they were tried and convicted for Clark Stevens' murder in 1982 and Jon Hellyar's murder in 1983. Those convictions tacked on another 50 years to life for Clark and 75 years to life for Jon. They tried to appeal in 1989, but the court shut that down real quick. And these two have been separated ever since. Michael is currently locked up at Mule Creek State Prison, a maximum security facility just east of Sacramento. I wonder if he's working on a new manifesto while he's in there.
Yeah.
And Susan, she's at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. Lord only knows how many witches she thinks she's seeing walking around that prison every single day.
Right.
But 3 lives lost to one woman's crazy and a man's inability to think for himself. And it was all fueled by drugs.
Yeah.
So what's the moral of the story? Don't do drugs.
Exactly.
Don't do drugs, y'all.
Especially when you're knucking futs.
But that is the story of the witch hunters, Suzan Barnes Carson and James Michael Bear Carson. And that's all I have to say about that. For nearly 7 years, Jane Doe has lived in the shadows, her past buried deep beneath layers of secrecy and silence. After completing more than was asked of her in her last assignment for the enigmatic Kaiwolf project, Jane Doe vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies and unanswered questions. But now, as the specter of her past returns with a vengeance, Jane finds herself thrust back into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. When her former sins come knocking on her door, Jane is faced with an impossible choice: continue to hide in the shadows, or once again take up arms against the forces that threaten to tear apart the fabric of society. With enemies lurking around every corner and allies who may not be what they seem, Jane must rely on her wits, training, and her unyielding determination to survive. And while trust is a luxury she cannot afford, Jane must confront the truth about herself and her past. As the clock ticks, she realizes that the line between family, friend, and foe are razor thin, and in the end, the only person she can rely on is herself. Jane Doe 4 Charlotte is available September 24th, 2024. No name, no regrets, no mercy.
I have a simple take on all of this.
Okay.
You know, what's really frightening is at any given time when you're out in public and you're around people, you never know which one of those people might be like totally bonkers.
And looking at you and thinking you're the witch or a devil or Satan himself.
I mean, you think about some of these, you know, the three people they killed, they had no idea.
No.
None whatsoever.
No. I mean, think about it. Keryn was just like, out of the goodness of her heart, you guys want to live with me?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the last guy, Jon, was just that he picked up hitchhikers. These two need a ride.
Yeah.
And then they start bitching about his music.
Jeez.
I mean, come on.
Woo.
Come on.
Scary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get away from that insanity and go to another bit of insanity with Bless Your Heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right, number one, I'm late for a very important date.
I'm late.
For a very important date.
Yeah. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
Yep.
I can't believe I remembered that. I read a lot to the kids when they were little.
Okay, number one. All right, his commitment to being on time for a job interview is admirable, but his execution, well, not so much.
Okay.
A state trooper in Cromwell, Connecticut, clocked a Mercedes doing 132 miles an hour.
132?
On a local interstate, reports WFSB. The trooper turned on his lights and siren and started to pursue, but the driver failed to stop and accelerated away while making unsafe lane changes and weaving in and out of traffic.
At 132 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's according to state trooper news release.
Okay.
The trooper called off the chase in name of safety, but easily tracked down the vehicle's owner by phone. The owner, presumably a parent, explained that the 19-year-old Asmir Jijorgbla, it has more consonants than vowels. So
Asmir, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Asmir.
Asmir.
Had the car at the time, per CBS News. Police say Jijorgbla himself then confessed and explained that he was late for a job interview. He faces a number of charges, including reckless driving and endangering police in a pursuit. No word on whether he got the job or will ever again get the car.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Sorry for the mispronunciation of the name. I actually thought I had it before I started this, and the minute I got to it again, I'm like, yeah, I have no chance.
Poor Asmir.
Yeah.
I wonder if he got the job.
I doubt it. Number two. Just a bit outside.
You love that one.
I do. A Little League manager in New Jersey stole $6,500 from the team's account.
Oh, my gosh.
So, an attempt to make it right, last week he robbed a bank to pay it all back. But the cops quickly figured out what he'd done and arrested him for both crimes.
Wow. Can you imagine if that was your child's Little League coach?
Gosh.
What would you be thinking? You're like, oh my God, I left my child alone with him.
Lord have mercy. All right, number three, and finally. There's no place like home.
Okay.
It might be one of the easiest police chases in the books. Police in West Jordan, Utah, say a motorcyclist took off during a routine traffic stop, and the officer involved stated that he was following him briefly before cutting off the chase.
Okay.
All right. The motorcyclist, identified as Brandon Briggs, 38, may have thought he'd gotten away scot-free, but not so. It turns out the officer had recognized him, so police simply went to Briggs's house, waited for him, where they arrested him upon the return about an hour later, reports Fox 13.
Oh, my gosh. I know that guy.
Yeah.
I know him.
Yeah, let's just go over and wait for him.
Yeah.
So he got busted.
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine?
Just dumber than a fence post.
I know where West Jordan, Utah is. It's a beautiful area.
Is it?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's right there by Salt Lake City.
Okay. Yeah.
But apparently, don't be friends with a cop if you're going to ride your motorcycle recklessly.
Yeah. Home to the world's not so smart criminals.
That was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Okay.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you got to do is go to hitchedtohomicide.com. When you get there, there's a pull-down menu. And while you're there, you can also tell us about your brush with true crime or suggest a case. I got that backwards. I usually say it the other way around.
Wait, reverse. Say it again.
Everybody knows this end part, or they've already disconnected from us.
All right.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.